2 or 3 tracks parallel to it that weren't connected by rails. To get to that track, you have to lift the locomotive with that crane and move it over to that track. This is where they got their rebuilds. Typically every 5 years, they need that a full rebuild. They take all the flues and tubes out and stay bolts and redo all of that. Now, of course, it's antique cars and trucks and airplanes and wagons and boats.
That's the government at work.
And we've been working on the DC-3 airplane. It's getting a full cosmetic restoration. It'll never fly again, in part because we don't have a runway, but it'll be as if it could. The hand car is what last year's boot camp worked on. They fixed the crank, which had been bent by people using it overzealously, putting too much force on it. Unfortunately, the same problem has happened again. I don't think we're going to work on it this year, but that is sort of a design problem with the hand car itself. I don't know. That may be water. I don't imagine it had oil in it. It is very couple years.
Well, it's got pads underneath.
It does, but we know the roof leaks too.
Okay. Without looking at this.
I wrote that. You wrote it?
Yeah. I've been to the plate.
Have you really? Why do you call it?
Okay, this was one of 2 that was delivered to Lexington. What I don't know the exact name. American La France. Actually arrived by train. Down at the Lexington Depot when it was still there. And they had a big thing about it. And long story short, back then they had basically one big firehouse. And they had little call boxes all over town that were basically by number. And however many whistles would throw up would say that's where you need to go. There was a false alarm that was on the south end of town, so this truck, along with all the people, took off after it. And as they were coming back up Main Street, another alarm went off, this time on the north end of town. And long story short, they were racing uptown, and the theater that we have now, which is the Civic Center, was a theater back then. And it was New Year's Eve, so they had night features all night, and was literally letting out right at midnight. And there were a bunch of people out in front releasing. And one of the patrons and his wife, who was, I think, a local doctor, I think he was a local doctor, had started up his car, and his car was one of those that basically you had to start and warm it up. Well, he thought he had it warm enough, and he was pulling up to the stoplight, or the turn, I don't know if it was stoplight, and was going to turn left. Heard the fire engine coming, and actually had just picked up. I didn't know this until I talked to one of the people that died. Or dollars. Anyway, she said they had just picked him up several blocks back because he had heard the whistle, missed the truck going down, ran from his house to the main street, waved him down, jumped on, and they kept going fast. And like I said, he was trying to turn left. His car stalled. He heard the fire truck coming, said, okay, I got out of the way, turned right. And the driver saw it too late, overcorrected, hit the car, and flipped the truck. And of course, it's been rebuilt now. But 3 firemen, I believe, 2, as I've heard it, the 2 that were standing on the back, and 1 that was sitting beside the driver, died pretty much instantly, from what I was told. Right there on the street. So they called it the false alarm at midnight, and the truck stayed in service, I think until the 50s or 60s, I think is what Tyler wrote on here. Yep, right there on the screen, and then it basically was taken out of service, and I assume donated at some point to the museum, and it sits here now. And But it's got an interesting little history to it. And I don't know about the second truck, whatever happened yet. But this one is the one that was wrecked that night. So, and I knew one of the guys that died, I knew his daughter. She passed away, I think last year. She was in a sweet baby. So, that's the story. That's my real connection here. And there's been a play written about it. I didn't know. No.
Who were you?
I was at choir
Okay.
because apparently there was some church service that night or something. So that was a good thing. So we sang.
So this car is really cool. Do you know the story of this car?
I know some of the stuff.
Some of the story. So this is a French boxcar. After World War II, France and most of Europe was in ruin, and the people of the United States organized the Friendship Train, which was 270 boxcars worth of food, medical supplies, and other war aid that was sent from the U.S. to France and some other countries in Europe. In thanks for that, the people of France filled 49 of these boxcars with gifts. I mean, they weren't giving food because we didn't need food and they didn't have those supplies, but it was stuff like wedding dresses and toys and dolls and their best set of china, just thanks to the American people. There was one for each of the 48 states, plus one that was split between Washington, D.C. and the Hawaii territory. Alaska was also a territory. They got nothing. They were filled with that stuff, and it was given to the people. This is a North Carolina boxcar. The items from this car, most of them are in the collection of the Museum of History in Raleigh. Not on display, but they're in their permanent storage. And we had an event where we actually got the item from the car this past winter. But the car lives here. Before they were donated, they were called 40 and 8 cars because they could carry 40 men or 8 horses. I don't imagine very comfortably for any of those men or horses, but they were used both for freight service and for World War I and World War II troop transport. So a lot of American GIs sort of bonded, from both wars, bonded with each other over their shared experiences riding in these cars to battle in both World Wars.
And the shield.
Quite a few years in between these two. And if you look at the hats that we gave you, you might recognize the colors between the hats and the boxcar. This car is exactly what it says on it. It was built and painted in 1970, and has a very 70s look about it. Yeah. But this was restored over the winter?
Last year.
Oh, that was last year.
It was last year because he came in September and they had just finished it.
Yeah.
Or he was just finished.
So a little less than a year ago.
Because it was in the shop.
From parts taken out of steam locomotives inside the back shop, they were brought out here and they would be moved across to the flue shop, which had all the windows we used to rebuild the flues, or they'd be brought down that way and there was this empty lot back there. There was the boiler shop, the carpenter's shop, the powerhouse is still standing. There was some, the wheel shop was back there. But before they were moved there, they'd be dumped in the lye pit, which is that red tank right there. Lye is a caustic chemical. It strips rust, paint, grime, anything off metal. And in 1913 or so, a worker fell into the pit. Of his skin. Yeah, he didn't live very long after they pulled him out. They had safety slogans everywhere. You saw the "Be careful" on the other side of the building. But working at the shops and working for the railroad was very dangerous. It still is dangerous, but not nearly as much as it used to be. This is the roundhouse. Let's go and see the turntable, and then we'll come back in here. But this is where they did the daily maintenance of steam locomotives. They pulled in right here. You can see underneath there's a pit where you go down and work on the underside. Let's take a spin on the turntable. This is our 100-foot electric turntable. It's got motors under each end, electric motors, and it was used to get locomotives in and out of the building every day. We still use it because we still park our diesel locomotives inside these numbered doors. Just get the power on. It's 100 feet long. Anybody know how long the 611 is?
I'd say they could put
It's 100, 102, 103 feet. Yeah. But all the wheels fit on the turntable. The couplers on both ends hang over. And that was pretty common back in the day too, to have locomotives, especially if you had a steam locomotive that wasn't in steam and you had the shop switcher on one end, it would overhang. All the wheels would be on the track, but it would be overhanging. There's a photo in our archives of they were spinning the turntable around with the dead locomotive and the switcher, and someone had left a diesel locomotive, I think it was an FT model, parked on one of these garden tracks too close, and they hit it with the end of the steam locomotive and derailed the little switcher. Okay.
hold on tight.
Everybody ready? Yeah, hold on tight. It's incredibly fast.
Slow down, motion sickness.
Been here for 15 years.
I'm going to line up this track with that red passenger car as if we would to show you how precise we have to be. How did I do? Yeah, that would work.
Thanks, son. Yeah.
If that wasn't lined up, if I were just an inch in either direction, and you tried to move the locomotive onto the turntable, it would probably wheels would climb on top of the rails and then they drop onto the ties. That's why they have these steel plates here. So if you do drop something on the ties, it won't destroy the wood. It'll land on the metal. It looks like they've seen some flanges before. If you look at these marks, I don't know whether that was in museum days or these are probably original to the turntable. In case of derailment like that, you wouldn't need the crane or anything. What you would do is you build ramps out of hardwood blocks, and you just back up and try to get the wheels to climb up the ramps and land back on the rails. So before I worked here, I worked for the Durango and Silverton Railroad in Colorado. I was involved in 3 minor derailments. The one that we actually got to help re-rail, we tried it with the wooden blocks, but they kept splitting in half or sinking into the mud. After 4.5 hours, we finally got it back on the track with just the pilot wheels of a steam locomotive. We had to jack and block them up so the flanges were above the rail, and then we looped a chain around the truck side frame, hooked it to a backhoe, and just pulled it repeatedly until the wheels crept over and dropped down onto the rails. It was exhausting. And very cold too. It was like a cold. We were supposed to take a flanger run that day to go clear snow, but that didn't happen. Alright, we're gonna go back to where we started, or where the turntable normally parks, rides. And no one's seen every steam locomotive in the country.
I've seen the big boy.
We've seen the big boy.
Yeah. This
In
past
Steam?
month. Yep, in Steam, 2014.
I'm pretty jealous of that.
I'll watch that on Facebook a lot.
I'm glad they brought
There was
that
a hard
back.
decision for me to choose to do either go see the big boy or go to Germany, but I just skip out the
Germany's a good choice too. So the basic mechanics of a steam locomotive, I'll start with the firebox. It's actually 2 layers. So you got your box that has the burning coal, and then the outer, the wrapper. The space between the two is full of water. So that's your heating surface. The firebox is surrounded by water on every side except the bottom. On the bottom, you have grates the burning coal sits on, and they have holes in them so air can pass up to them. Underneath the grates, you've got the ash pan. We have a door on them. I'm sure this lever is stuck, but if I were to pull that down, the ash pan doors would open so you could dump the ash into an ash pit. Or if you had to drop your fire, you could drop it onto the track. I don't know whether dropping it onto the track is better or worse than dropping it into the ash pan. But normally if you have to drop your fire on the road, you don't have a choice. You're going to be dropping your fire to prevent a boiler explosion, so it doesn't matter where you drop it. So your firebox is surrounded by water on all sides. From the front of the firebox, which is here, toward the smoke box. So from there to here, that is the boiler. So that's the big tank of water. It has hundreds of steel tubes called flues, steel tubes and flues that they've got hot air on the inside and water on the outside. They carry that hot air and smoke from the firebox to the smoke box and out the smokestack. All of that, those tubes where you've got hot air on the inside, water on the outside, those are part of your heating surface. The more of those tubes you pack in here, the faster you can turn water into steam. So they put as many as they can fit. This engine probably has 300 tubes in it. And it probably only holds about 1,000 gallons of water because it's so packed full of those tubes. So your fire will get up to about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit when you're working hard, when you're working the engine. And that boils the water and turns it into steam. The steam rises to the top of the boiler. And you You can think of that like almost if you blow a balloon full of air, the air inside the balloon wants to get out, so does the steam. We're gonna let it, but we're gonna make it do some work first. When the engineer opens the throttle, steam is allowed in a valve in here, it's allowed to go down the dry pipe, which comes down into the cylinders. There's one on each side. Inside there's a piston that comes down, it pushes that piston all the way to the other end of its stroke. Once it gets there, it's allowed to escape out the smokestack. That makes a chug sound when the steam goes, the used steam is exhausted out. That steam is gone, more steam is going to push that piston back the way it came, and again, escape, chug. More steam comes back, chug, and forth, and chug. So you've got your piston going back and forth. It's connected to these rods and cranks. It works just like your legs pedaling a bicycle, or if you use your legs, moving up and down, and then where those rods attach to the wheels, those are the pedals going around. I apologize if that was too simple an explanation. That's how I explain it to kids, and it seems to work. So that's the basic mechanics. A couple of the reasons why a steam locomotive works so well. The biggest is the smoke box. From here to here, it's just empty, full of air. At the bottom, you have the blast pipe, which is where the steam gets exhausted once it gets used in the cylinders, and it goes through the smoke box, which is empty, and out the smokestack. At the back, you have the tube sheet where you have all the tubes that end, and they're open on that end. And that moving steam from the blast pipe to the smokestack, that moving steam creates a really strong draft that sucks air through the fire, through the tubes, and out the smokestack. And the harder your engine is drafting, the more air your fire gets, and the hotter it gets. So when you're sitting still, the hottest you can get that fire is about 800 degrees. When you're moving, that's what gets it up to 2000. It's a really nice design feature where the harder the engine's working, the more power it can produce. It's really, really crucial. If you're working the engine hard and you have to stop long enough where your fire dies down, you're going to have a hard time getting going again. I've experienced that firsthand a couple times. I might tell that story a little later. If it comes to it. Other stuff you see here, you got your sand dome. That is uses compressed air to push sand down these pipes. And in front of the wheels, that's sanding the rails for traction. You absolutely need that. Modern locomotives have it too. When I worked for the railroad, I found out firsthand why you need that. I can tell this story now. It's not too long. We had a heavy train. It was actually heavier than it was supposed to be. The engines in Durango, the K28s are rated for 10 cars, and we had 11 cars that day because the owner of the railroad decided to put his private car on the back to woo investors. Sorry, I'm confusing my stories. The K36s are good for 12 cars. We had 13 cars. That's better because we were going all the way to Silverton. So we had a heavy train and the rails were wet because it had rained the night before. As we're going up, I was a brakeman. So I was riding the car right behind the locomotive and I heard the wheels slipping. And eventually we stopped. We stopped at a flag stop. I walked up the engine to see what was wrong because we weren't scheduled to stop there. And the engineer told me the sanders have stopped working. I want you to go back to the concession car and get us a stack of paper soda cups. I'm like, this doesn't sound good. So I get him, and I come back up, and I hand him up, and he's like, no, you're going to get up in the cab, and you're going to ride with us. And when we get to the bottom of Snowshed Slide, the grade, which is like 3.5%, you're going to get out on this walkway, fill them up in the sand dome, then you're going to sit on the front of the engine and pour sand from the paper soda cups onto the rails. Yeah. So I did. It was an experience I'm glad I had once. I don't think I'd like to do it again. The worst part was actually not on the front because once you get up there, I kind of felt like Jack and Rose in Titanic. I didn't want to do the Titanic thing, but I also didn't want that to be my obituary. Because it's kind of peaceful out there. It's kind of quiet. You hear the smokestack behind you, but it's not super loud. The worst part was right here on this walkway because you can hear the wheels going right beneath you, like that meat grinder right below you, and you're getting pelted by the cinders getting blasted out of the smokestack. Those are hot cinders. They burn through my long sleeves, through my leather gloves. I've got third-degree burns on my neck from maybe not those cinders, but cinders up close are unpleasant. So I managed to get that and got down the front, and it was pretty calm. So we got up Snowshed Slide. It seemed quick. I found a place where I could pour the sand through a hole in the deck where the wind wouldn't catch it. And then before I knew it, the fireman was out there tapping me on the shoulder saying, bring me back inside. And then coming into Silverton, the track arrived. So Silverton is a little town of like 300 people in the summer, 100 people in the winter, in the middle of a volcanic caldera at 9,300 feet above sea level in the Rocky Mountains. And the tracks run up a dirt road, 2 tracks in a dirt road right into downtown. And that is, coming into the curve, it's a steep grade and a sharp curve. So you've got a lot of friction on the curve and a steep grade. We always have a hard time getting up there in the best of conditions. So we started slipping again, so I went back out, and as we pulled into town, there was another train sitting on the other track full of passengers waiting to depart. They were all watching us. It seemed like the entire town heard what was happening, and they came out to see us. So the sidewalks are packed too. Meanwhile, the owner of the railroad is still in his private car at the back of the train, watching what's going on. And this grumpy old passenger conductor, Dan Snegby, he trained me. He was your classic. He knows his stuff, but he's not going to tolerate any nonsense. He's standing there on the platform. I have never seen him surprised like that. He has seen it all, but apparently he's not seen that. Me on the front of the locomotive pouring sand, the fireman up here filling up more buckets and passing them down to me. The fireman on the other train that was waiting for us, he got out. He was walking in front of us, standing the other rail. Yeah. I didn't tell my mom about what my day had involved until after I left the railroad, because she didn't need to know that my job involved such things. So let's go around, and we're going to go up in the cab forever. So I'll try not to. We got room. If you want to sit down, out of the seats, you're welcome to. So this is a pretty typical steam locomotive cab. They all have generally the same parts, although the newer locomotives are typically bigger, and the back head doesn't. This is the back head, doesn't extend into the cab so far. So on the 611, this is flush with the front wall of the cab. If you haven't seen in the cab that locomotive, but you've got your firebox. You got your firebox doors. We've got them propped open so everyone can see inside the firebox. So normally those would be closed until you step on the pedal to open them. Right behind you is your coal bunker. This one will hold about 10 tons of coal, and underneath the coal is a 6,000-gallon water tank. That would be enough coal for your entire trip, but you'd have to stop and take water about every 30 miles. Your coal you'd be shoveling would be to cover the grate inside here. The grate is about the size of a queen-size bed. You don't want any holes in your fire or any lumps. You want to keep it a smooth, even, thin coat of coal. If you need more power than a thin coat can provide, you can put a heel just inside the door, and you can line your side sheets on the sides of the firebox with more coal, and that'll give you all the power you can use. The whole job of this locomotive is to turn water into steam as fast as possible. It doesn't really stay in here. It's continuously pumped from the tender into the boiler, turned into steam, used once, and then blasted out the stack. So as the fireman, you would be running your water pump, which is right here, main pump, and then you have a backup pump, which is identical on the engineer's side in case this one fails. And sometimes it's as simple as the handle falling off. I had that happen to me once. Mo, the handle of the injector fell off. Can you turn yours on? Just holding the handle. And you'll be pumping that continuously to keep the boiler full of water. This sight glass tells you it fills up with, there should be a piece of glass here, and a tube inside that fills up with water and tells you where the level is inside the boiler. This sight glass is your safe range of water. If you have any more than that, you can get water into the cylinders, which is a problem. You can blow the ends of the cylinders off the engine. If you have too little water, the top of the firebox will overheat and melt, and all of your steam pressure will be exhausted near instantaneously through your fire onto the track. Everything above the wheels gets blasted off like a rocket. It can land a mile away, and you really don't want to be in here when that happens. So as a fireman, you'd be checking your sight glass very often. I used to check mine every 5 seconds, not because you can lose water that fast, but as the engine's moving, the water's kind of sloshing back and forth, so the water's going like this, and you kind of always want to get an average and figure out, okay, where is it really? And then you also want to know, am I pumping water faster than the engine's using it, or it's slower, because I have to match how fast I'm pumping to how fast the engine is using it. You want to keep the water glass at about 3/4 of a glass to give you some play in either direction. I had a couple high water situations and a couple low water situations, but nothing blew up and we didn't blow any cylinders off the engine, so it was fine. Modern locomotives have 2 sight glasses, and then they often have the tricocks, which are drained from the boiler straight into the catcher pan. So if your water is here, and you open them up, you can tell by what's spraying out of them approximately where your water is. So if your water is here, this one will spray steam, and those 2 will spray water. I was trained by the railroad that if I don't know where my water is, I open the bottom tricock, and if only steam comes out, set the brakes and drop the fire. You drop the fire by unlocking these grate shaker bars. You take the grate shaker, it's like a cheater bar. You slide it over these and then you shake them. If you want to clean your fire, you can shake them gently to shake the ash through. If you want to drop your fire, you shake them violently and you drop all the burning coal into the ash pan. You do that when you're moving. That's what the company told me. My coworkers told me, yeah, don't bother dropping the fire. If you open that bottom tricock and only steam comes up, set the brakes and jump. If it's going to blow up, let it blow up. It's better it blow up than you blow up with it. Yeah, so that's water. The other thing you'll be watching is the pressure gauge, which should be right there on that bracket. We normally have pretty good security in this roundhouse. We had the Spencer police come by every night, but our pressure gauge got stolen last year. Since I was in here last week, the sight glass guards have been taken. This one is kind of stuck in there, so I might leave that. And I'm going to close this door real quick before we get out of here. Unfortunately, it's mostly souvenir hunters that are responsible for theft from train museums, not people who are looking for scrap value. We can tell because when the pressure gauge went missing, I was the one who found that it was missing, and there was a piece of this brass piping that was just loose on top of it. If it was a scrap collector, they would have taken the piping, but a collector, they just wanted that steam gauge. So, and the projector's been knocked off. I'm gonna have to come and fix this later, but yeah, there's our steam locomotive. Any questions about anything up here or anything about steam locomotives? Yeah.
So I noticed that